me? Okay. So my name is Kerry, and I am from Jamaica, and I now live in New York City. And so I am going to talk to you a little bit about the heart today. All right, so I'm going to share my screen, and then we'll get started. All right, can you see the screen? Yes? Okay, so presenting on Zoom is a little bit awkward because I can't hear anybody's voice. I can't hear, what you're thinking. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is when I ask you a question or when you have something to say, for you to type it in the chat box, right? Because mind education is all about communication. So we have to communicate with each other. But if I'm the only one speaking, then that's not going to be communication. So I want you to type in the chat box if you have something to say, or when I ask a question, I want you to type it in the chat box as well. Because what I want you to do is, as we're going through the mind education, it's about your heart and your mind that you're thinking about. So this time, only about 40 minutes, we're just going to think about who we are as a person. So give me a thumbs up if you're going to go there with me. We're going to think about our heart and who we are as people, right? And so I'm going to ask you to communicate with me, even though we can't, we're not face to face. Okay, so when you think about perseverance, right? So this lecture is about nurturing perseverance. What comes to mind when you think about someone who can persevere? Can you put that in the chat box? What comes to mind? Anything at all when you think about someone who can persevere? You're going to help me out a little bit, right? So that I can see what you're doing. All right. So when I think about perseverance, I think about someone who's really resilient and someone that doesn't give up. No matter what the situation is, you don't ever give up. But to have perseverance, you have to have mental strength. It's not physical strength, it's mental strength. If you are not mentally strong, you cannot persevere and go through difficulties, right? So your heart has to be strong. You have to have a very strong fighting spirit in order to persevere and overcome difficulties. Right now, I'm an educator, right? And so I'm a school leader in Queens. And the neighborhood in Queens where I am is a center of the coronavirus. That is where it is most prevalent, where my school is, my students are. So my family, the students' families are getting it a lot. We have family members from students who have passed away. We have, one student whose family member passed away in front of him and things like that. So they're going through a really difficult time. But even before Corona, just as human beings, we go through really, really difficult times. But how do we overcome those situations? That is what we're going to talk about today, right? But in order to do that, we have to have a very strong mind and a very strong heart. Otherwise, it is impossible. So when I think about perseverance, I can think about perseverance by looking at these images right here that I put on the screen, right? And if you look at the one down here on the bottom, it says impossible. We cannot hold on to things being impossible, else we cannot persevere and we cannot overcome, right? And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So in the chat box now, what do you think this is? Remember, we're going to communicate, right? What do you think this is? Go ahead, put it in the chat box. So what this is actually is a clearing for the foundation of a house or like a building, right? And here they are, they're clearing the dirt and they're moving everything away because they have to lay the foundation right here, right? That's what they're doing. And so when you see it, in order for any building to be strong, you have to lay a foundation, right? And the foundation itself has to be really, really strong. And that's how the rest of the building is able to stand and go through hurricane and go through earthquakes and all of those things because the foundation is strong. So for us, in order for us to be human beings who are strong, we have to have a strong foundation. If our foundation is weak, then we cannot be resilient and we cannot persevere and we cannot be strong and we cannot be successful and we cannot be happy. So our foundation must be strong. Just like the foundation of a building has to be very strong. And so what we do in mind education is we talk about the heart and the mind, because without the heart and the mind being strong, of course, you cannot be happy and you cannot be successful, right? And so what we do is almost like a GPS or a compass. We navigate the heart. But usually in life, we don't navigate our heart. We just go through our routine. We have to wake up. We have to go do our job. We have to go to school. We have to do this. We have to go grocery shopping. We have to do this. Okay, finish, prepare everything. Okay, go to sleep, and then that's it. But we don't spend a lot of time thinking about who we are as people and what our mind is like and what our heart is like, right? And so we have to do that as human beings. And so when you think about your heart and your mind, you have the physical body, right? I'm going to move this over just a little bit. You have the physical body, but you also have your mind and your heart. So your physical body, you have your senses, you have to make sure you're eating, and that your nutrition is well, you have to make sure you're sleeping, all of those things. But also, there's the other part of what makes you who you are, and that is your mind and your heart. Now, oftentimes what we do is we focus on the physical. And oftentimes when we're even raising our kids, I have 4 boys, actually. 1 16, 1 14, 1 9, 1 6. I have 4 boys, and I'm also an educator. So I take care of 214 students. So what we usually do, even me, most of the time as a mom, I try to make sure they have food to eat, they have lunch, they have dinner, they have clothes, they're studying, and all of those things. But when I think about what I want my boys to grow up to be, I want them to grow up to be strong, successful, happy men, right? The part that I want, what I want them to be, giving them food only is not going to do it. Making sure they have clothes only is not going to do it. I have to make sure their mind is strong. I have to make sure their heart is strong. I have to make sure when I am not around anymore, that they can survive and they can persevere and they don't give up when something is difficult. So I have to build that mind inside of them. So I cannot only focus on making sure they go to school and have food and have clothes. I have to grow their mind. That is how important the mind is. And so as we live our lives, this is an EKG heart monitor. So this is how we monitor the state of our physical heart, right? So you can go to the doctor and the doctor can tell you about your heart. You can, monitor your glucose. You can see if your blood sugar is too high. There's a machine for that. There's a machine for your blood pressure. There's a machine to test your white blood cell count to see if you have cancer, if your cancer is going in remission. There's a test for almost everything like that. But what is the test? That test to see if your mind is healthy. What is the test? To test to see if your heart is healthy. How can you tell if you have a healthy mind and a strong heart? Because that is what's going to make you who you are. That's what's going to make you happy and successful. But we don't often talk about that. But we're going to talk about that today, right? And so I'm going to give you a few questions. Now, remember, you're going to help me out and you're going to type in the chat box. Okay, and I'm going to look at your responses in the chat box. Are you ready? So give me a thumbs up if you're ready. Give me a thumbs up if you're ready. Okay. All right, here's the first question. And you're going to answer, always. I do that often. I do that sometimes. No, rarely. I really rarely do that. Or I never. Nope, that's not me at all. So remember, during mind education, it's not just me giving you knowledge. As I'm talking, I want you to think about your own heart. All right? So we have to be really honest. Okay? Here's the first question. I hold on to the painful moments or events in my past. I hold on to the painful things in my past, and that kind of affects my life. So I want you to put in the chat box your answer. Always, often, sometimes, rarely, never. All right, here's the next one. I walk away from very difficult challenges. I walk away from very difficult challenges. Here's the next one. And keep putting it in the chat box. It is hard for me to admit when I am wrong. It is hard for me to admit when I'm wrong. All right, here's the next one. I forgive others easily. If someone does something to me, I forgive them easily. No problem. So keep putting it in the chat box, right? Okay, I'm going to keep going because now we're going to navigate our hearts, right? Here's the next one. I seek advice. I seek advice. If I'm not clear about something, I go and ask. I don't only focus on what I think to be right. I go and ask other people. So I need you to keep putting it in the chat box. I develop bad habits when I'm in difficult situations. I'm going to read that one again. I develop bad habits when I am in difficult situations. For example, I'm locked away. I cannot go anywhere because of the coronavirus. And then I start developing bad habits, doing things that I know are not healthy for me, my body, physically, mentally, but I do it. Or when I'm upset, I might do things like I might drink if I'm upset, and that's my outlet. I'm almost done. It is hard for me to ask for help. So some people are putting in the chat box, but some people I hope you're thinking about it. It is hard for me to ask for help because we have to think about our own hearts, right? Here's the next one. I feel hopeless. I feel hopeless. I trust easily. I trust easily. Do you always trust easily, or do you never trust easily, or sometimes maybe? I feel misunderstood. I promise we're almost over. And so some people, this is really uncomfortable because, again, we don't really talk about our hearts a lot. I feel like giving up. I feel like giving up. I know my weaknesses and I focus on improving them. Are you someone that focuses on your weakness, and then work to get better? Or are you someone that mostly focuses on what you're good at? All right. So I'm going to keep going, okay? So wherever our hearts are, whatever you hold inside of your heart, that is going to set your trajectory for where your life goes. So if what you're holding in your heart is past painful experiences that you can't let go, that's going to set where your life goes. If what you're holding in your heart is, I don't ask for advice, I know the answers, or I'll find the answers by myself, that's going to set the trajectory of your life. And what you have to remember is that your heart and your mind, that is what leads your body. Your body doesn't go on its own, right? That is what leads your body. So we have to be clear about where our hearts are, right? And be honest with ourselves, because if we don't navigate our hearts and we're not honest with ourselves, then we cannot change, right? So in life, I'm not there in India, but I know for me, when I'm here and I'm speaking to people in America or people in Jamaica, there are many things that go through the human heart. Right now, young people in America, they're really, really obsessed with social media, right? And that is one very big problem that we have in the United States in high schools and middle school, how they use social media. There's a lot of depression and anxiety. There's a lot of addiction, a lot of suicidal thoughts, many family problems. A lot of people cannot admit when they're wrong. There's a lot of anger, negative thoughts. So right here, as you look at this list, what I want you to put in the chat box is I want you to count on your hands. Count on your hands. How many of these relate to you? As you live your life, as we think about your heart and your mind, how many relate to you? So I just want you to put it in just a number in the chat box. That's all I'm asking you to do. Just put a number, but actually count it. So what we have to think about is all these things happen to human beings. Really, it's not about being in India, and it's not about being in America, and it's not about being in South America or Jamaica. These things happen in the life of a human being, right? And that is what we have to think about when we think about how healthy your heart is. How is your heart able to overcome all of these things? And the big one I can put on this right now, right, is the coronavirus and what it is doing, right? My kids haven't been outside for about 4 weeks, right? And so we have to think about that. So I can put that on here too. That's something affecting everyone right now on the planet. So how do we overcome this plus everything that's happening right now? We have to have a strong mind and a strong heart. So what we have to talk about is how we get that. Because if we don't have that, when the problems come and our mind and heart are not strong, then we shatter. Then addiction comes. Then the negative thoughts come. Then the isolation comes. All of that comes when the problem hits our heart. But I want you to think about it really carefully. How is it that we can have two people, very similar circumstance, very similar social economic background, very similar families, right? Going through very similar difficulties, and one overcomes and the other does not overcome. You have to think about that. How can one overcome and one doesn't not or one not overcome when their situation is almost the same? Because of the mindset of the other person that overcame. The mindset is what is important. So we go through our lives, right? And we are somewhere on this staircase. I won't do it. I can't do it. I want to do it. How do I do it? I'll try to do it. I can do it. I'll do it. Yes, I'll do it. But as we live our lives, we're somewhere here. No, it can be done. Yes, I can do it. No, it can be done. I don't know. Right? But in order for us to have a happy and successful life, remember, your mind has to be strong, because the heart and the mind is not surface. And what we spend all our time talking about as we interact with each other is the 10% that's seen at the top. But we are human beings. We are dynamic creatures. There's so much going on inside of us that we don't tell anyone. Is that true or no? Yes or no? Do you tell everybody everything that's going on in your heart and in your mind? Absolutely not. So we are very dynamic. But what we do as we communicate, unfortunately, is we only talk about the surface things, the 10%. But there's so much more that makes us who we are. And so even when we talk about someone that uses drugs or someone that is an alcoholic, we tend to only talk about the surface. Make sure you don't drink anymore. Make sure you don't go to the bar anymore. Make sure you don't use this anymore. Make sure you don't hang out with your friends that do that anymore. Make sure you don't. That's what we do. But that's not the issue. Taking the alcohol away from an alcoholic, that's not solving the problem. What you must ask is, down here, why did you start to drink in the first place? Why did you start to smoke in the first place? Where does this anger that you have in your heart, where does that come from in the first place? You can't just say, don't be angry anymore. Don't drink anymore. Don't smoke anymore. Don't do drugs anymore. Don't be disrespectful anymore. Make sure you study. You're not studying. That is all surface, because we've been living our lives only focusing on surface and not talking about the other 90%. Right? And so thoughts cannot be measured, like how, your heart rate can be measured, but the effects of the thoughts are really, really, really felt, but you can't measure it. So a group of psychologists said that 85% of the thoughts that a human being thinks on a daily basis is negative. 85%. And 95% are repetitive. Keep thinking about the same thing over and over and over. 85% are negative, and 95% are repetitive. So I'm constantly thinking, oh my God, why is she doing this? Why is he doing? And if you sit down, and one day I actually sat down and I thought about it, most of what I'm thinking about is negative. Is this going to work? And a lot of it is about complaining about the things that are happening in the day. And I'm thinking about the same thing every single day because I have a routine. And that's where we're only doing this over and over and over and over and over and over, dealing with the surface as we live our lives and never going any deeper. And so what mind education is all about is going deeper, not staying right here, which is why I want you to not only hear my words as knowledge, I want you to hear it and think about your own life, right? So I want you to stop for just a second. And I want you to think about what you usually think about. Think about the thoughts that usually consume you on a daily basis. Do you find yourself having to remind yourself that there are many things to still be thankful for? Because that's something I have to consciously tell myself. Because this is not going okay. This is not going okay. I have to do this. This is not working. I have to stop and think about what is working, what I do have to be thankful for. So I want you to just think, just between this morning when you woke up and right now, what are the things that were consuming your thoughts? And what I also want you to think about now is the way that you've been living your life. What kinds of thoughts have been preventing you from being someone with a really strong heart and strong mind? What thoughts are kind of crippling you or have crippled you in your life and prevented you from living a full life with a strong heart that can overcome anything? I want you to really think about that carefully. Can you, even if you want, you can put it in the chat box. If you don't want to type it in the chat box, I want you to just raise your hand if you can think about some recurring thought that you've had throughout the years that really stopped you from being really strong in your heart and your mind. Just put your hand up if you can think of something that has been preventing you from nurturing a strong mind, or you can put it in the chat. So one story I heard a really long time ago was about how they trained elephants. And so they would tie the rope on the elephant's foot when the elephant was a baby, and that would prevent the elephant from escaping. And as the elephant would try to escape, the rope would actually, hurt his leg, and so he would not move. And so this young man was walking by, and this young man saw a grown elephant and went to the grown elephant's owner and said, this elephant is so huge and he's not escaping. He's not going anywhere. And the rope that's around his foot is withered and broken and, so easily he can go. Why is the elephant still here? And the owner said, because when that elephant was younger, a rope was tied around his leg to keep him in one place. And when he moved, that rope hurt, right? And so as the elephant grew older, the elephant just stayed in that same mindset that rope was going to hurt him and that rope could control him and keep him in one spot. But the rope couldn't do that. So the elephant actually could escape, but the elephant didn't escape. Why? Because the elephant wasn't physically strong enough? No. Because someone had a whip to beat him? No. The elephant didn't move because of all the experience the elephant had being tied from a young age. So I want us to think about our own minds. There are thoughts and there are hearts that we have in our mind that keep us trapped. And we don't talk about them much, and we just keep going, right? But we cannot grow. Just like this elephant cannot develop and move around and experience life, we cannot grow if we have thoughts that are trapping us. And so we cannot overcome. We cannot be people who are resilient and people that persevere and people that overcome anything if first we're not honest with ourselves. Nobody else knows what's inside of our heart. So we have to be honest with ourselves. And we have to think about the thoughts that are impacting us that we don't share with anyone. Or we have to think about those thoughts that maybe we have shared, but we have not let go of. Does that make sense? Yes? No? Does that make sense? Okay. So you can think about it like Wi-Fi, right? If you think about Wi-Fi, you know, you don't have to read all these words here. But if you think about Wi-Fi, if you have very low Wi-Fi, that's like very low Wi-Fi in your heart. I can't do this anymore. Nobody understands me. Nothing is going to change. Everything is going to stay the same. All of those things is what you're thinking. So your heart Wi-Fi is really, really low. Your heart Wi-Fi is really low. You're not going to be very productive. You're going to stay complaining, 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 complaining. Right? But let's see. Maybe you have 1 bar. Right? This is too hard. No one understands me. So I'm just going to not say anything. I'm not going to ask for, I'm going to just keep it to myself. I don't want to get counseling. I don't want to get advice. I'm just going to keep trying all by myself. That's like your one Wi-Fi, your 1 bar Wi-Fi heart. And then get some more Wi-Fi here. Now you're almost there. Maybe, just maybe, I can go ask someone. Maybe the way I'm thinking about things is not right. I need to go get some advice. How am I contributing to this situation? Like, I'm married now for 18 years, right? When I'm having an argument with my husband, if I am going to always be right and he's always going to be right, then there's no communication that's going to happen. So what do we have to do? I have to think about, you know, how did I contribute to this mess that's going on right now that we're arguing about? And then he has to think about, well, how did I contribute to this mess that's happening right now? But if I'm right all the time and he's right all the time, then there's no communication that's going to happen. Right? And that's just marriage, right? But just in life, whatever situation you're in, you have to think and you have to reflect on, how did I contribute to me being here? What were the mistakes I made? If you don't do this, you cannot grow as a human being and your heart cannot get strong, right? And maybe this situation will make me stronger so I can help others with the same problems later. Then your heart starts to go in that direction, right? Then when you have all 4 bars, you know what? You have the mindset to think, this is not permanent. I'm going through a difficulty right now. I'm going through coronavirus right now. Sorry, actually, my school, we got out of school March 16th. We have not been back to the building. I told you there are family members that have passed away. There are kids that are really, really suffering. And right now, we're not sure that we're going back to the building. So we're supposed to go back to the school in the fall, in September, but we're not sure right now if they're going to open back the schools first to go back. We literally don't know. Right? And so many, many things are happening. But if I hold on to, this is so horrible, this is not going to end, you know, my situation right now is so difficult, then I cannot have hope and my mind cannot go. But I can think, this is temporary, it's going to change. This is not going to be my situation forever. I can also think, what can I learn from this situation? What can I learn? I've actually had students say to me, Mrs. Esty, this is the first time I actually sat down with my mom and talked to her about life. Because usually their moms and dads are working 1, 2, 3 jobs and they don't really talk to each other. But as for a 10-year-old to be able to say, you know, this virus is really terrible, but I can find the things inside of it to be thankful for. A 10-year-old. So when you can see light inside of difficult situations, that is a strong mind and that is a strong heart, right? And when you can think, even though this situation is like this, I still have a lot to be thankful for, right? One of the teachers I work with, her mom passed away because of the coronavirus, right? And she could not see her mom when her mom was in the hospital because she couldn't go to the hospital. And when her mom died, she could not have a funeral for her mom because there were so many bodies. The morgues were overfull. The funeral homes were overfull. She's still waiting for the opportunity to bury her mom. But when I talked to that teacher, right, she's thinking, you know what? My mom, she was in the hospital. She passed away. She's thinking, well, she didn't suffer a lot because of this, this, this. And also, I'm so thankful because we got to spend so many years together and we got to say goodbye on the telephone when the nurse was holding the telephone and I had mine at my house and I could. So she's finding all the light inside the difficulty. Only someone with a strong mind and a strong heart can do that. Otherwise, you fall in the face of despair and you cannot get back up. So you have to think, where is your heart Wi-Fi right now? Which one are you? Which one is your heart Wi-Fi? How have you been living your life? So I want you to think about that. Do you have 1 bar? Do you have 2 bars? Do you have all 3 bars? How have you been living? So if you can put it in the chat box. Right? And so the other thing that makes you able to have a strong mind is your perspective on how you see things, right? And so let's take a look at this picture. So I want you to put in the chat box. Are there 3 sticks or 4 sticks? Go ahead, put in the chat box. There are 3 or 4. 3 or 4. You have to pick one. Are there 7? Is there 10? How many? Okay, now tell me who's right. The guy on the left or the guy on the right? Who's right? Okay, how about this picture? Is that a 9 or is that a 6? Who's right? The guy on the left or the guy on the right? Perspective is everything. Perspective is everything. And building a strong mind and heart is also about perspective. Let's look at this picture. This is not science class, but let me explain a little bit, okay? Right here, how do I get strong muscles and look really cool? The fibers have to rip and mend and rip and mend and rip and mend, and that's how I get bulked up and become a bodybuilder and have good muscle tone. I cannot have great muscle if these fibers are not ripping and healing and ripping and healing so that I can bulk up. That's how you get muscles. The big muscles that you want to see and the tone that you want to see, that's how you get them. But as you're exercising, you feel the burn, right? Yes? When you're exercising, you feel it burning. When you feel it burning, what do you want to do? Stop. You don't want to go anymore. At that point is a point where you want to stop. But if you stop at that point, you do not get good muscle tone. You have to fight through the burn. The fibers have to actually rip. And when it heals, that scar tissue gives you the muscles that you want. If you stop before that, you don't get it. Now let's look at the other picture. This is myelin. So these are neurons, and what happens is that, when you're processing information in your brain, neurons transmit that information. Now it can transmit that information quickly or slowly, right? And so what scientists figured out is that these things right here are called myelin sheets. And they were thinking, wait, are you born with thick myelin sheets? Because if your myelin sheets are really thick, you can understand information really fast. You can pick up things really quickly. And so you're not born with thick myelin sheet. You develop thick myelin sheet when you think critically And when you go through difficult situations and like instead of the teacher solving the math problem for you, you take the math problem and you struggle and you get through it. That is actually, that critical thinking is actually what develops myelin sheaths. So the more you do that, the more you use your brain, the more you think critically, the more you overcome difficult situations as you're doing your work, is the better you're able to process information as you get older. But what do we want to do when something is really hard? When we're doing algebra or we're doing statistics or we're doing something like that, we want to stop and go to Google or ask someone. But as you struggle through it, that is what's actually making it easier for you to process. So look at, this is life. Going through difficulties is the only way to get a mind and a heart that's strong. You will not have a strong mind and a strong heart if you never go through difficulty. It doesn't happen. So what is perspective? Perspective is when you're going through a difficulty, don't see it as death. Don't see it as your ruin. Don't see it like that. See it as, when I go through this, when I fight through this, I'm going to be better because of it. If you think like that, it's very hard to commit suicide. If you think like that, it's hard to be depressed. It's hard to stay in anxiety. Because you know, walking through that difficulty, at the end of it, you will be a better person and a stronger person. But you have to walk through it. Just like the muscles, they have to tear. You have to go through the burn. When it's burning, that's when you have to keep going. That is how life is. That is exactly how life is. And so if you think about difficulties, it says one of the secrets of life is to make stepping stones out of stumbling blocks. If I'm trying to get to the end of the river and I'm here and I'm like, this is in my way, these are all stumbling blocks, then I'll never step on them and go. But another mindset could be, these are stepping stones. I need to be really careful. Right here in the river is really deep. There might be some creatures in here that, can really hurt me. I'm going to take my time and I'm going to walk across it and I'm going to make it to the other side and I'll be better for it. And that is how perspective changes your mindset. And so, as I finish up, and I really want you to just think about your heart, remember, as you're going, you have to think about what you're going through in reality now is not the end. That is not the truth. That is not where your life ends. The present is not where your life ends. So someone with a strong mind and a resilient heart can see beyond the reality. It's like this now, but it will not stay like this forever. I'm going to have to walk through and fight through and get to the other side. That is a strong mindset. And as I show you this picture, what do you see? What do you see in this image? You can just type it in the chat box really quickly. What do you see? So actually what this is, so Michelangelo said every block of stone has a statue inside it, and it is the task of the sculptor to discover it. So when he sees this, to me, when I see this, I'm like, I don't even want to take any chisel to this. When I see this, this is all burden. I don't want to see it. I don't want to look at it. There's no way I can even understand the heart of a sculptor that goes, takes a chisel, and actually carves through this humongous thing. I cannot even understand that heart. But Michelangelo said, when I see that, I don't see a big block like everybody else does. He can already see what it has become. And so he's just carving and carving until he gets to this, right? And that is how you see beyond the reality that is right in front of you. You can't just stay here. You have to see beyond, and that is how your mind gets really, really, really strong, right? And so as I close, this word here, pride, is one thing that really interferes with us having a strong mind and heart. It makes us not ask for help. It makes us not admit when we're wrong. It makes us always want to be right. This word right here, pride. We have to be really, really careful, because this is the one thing that causes so much destruction for human beings, pride. So we have to ask for help. We have to speak about what's inside of our heart. We cannot lock it away, right? That's really, really important, because if we lock it away, this is actually what happens. We don't ask for we don't communicate. We don't have someone to mentor us that we trust. We don't ask for counsel. And it's kind of like, you know, your heart becomes really, really unhealthy. So here's a clean glass of water. What do you have with a glass of water and you just put it down to sit? If I leave this glass of water to sit uninterrupted and I do not disturb this glass of water for 4 days, is it just as clean? It's not. Even though you can't see anything in it and it still looks clean, it is not still as clean. A lot of bacteria is already in there. And then we go through life and we keep our mouths closed and we don't talk about what's in our heart, right? Or we give up very easily when something is difficult, and then we get to middle school. And then look at the water starting to change. And then we get to high school. And then we get to be an adult, and they were wondering, oh my goodness, why is my son giving up so easily? Why is my son's mindset like that? Why? But it all started back here. I was so focused on making sure he had clothes to wear, food to eat, and all of those things. I wasn't focused on his mindset. And as I am living my life, right? Am I thinking deeply? Or I'm just making the things in my heart stay in my heart and continue to poison my heart and my mind. So I have to really think about that. So that's why I need to find someone that I trust to filter my thoughts. You know, I was thinking that, no, that's wrong. That's wrong, Kerry, that's wrong. Those thoughts need to go. You know, but I was also thinking that, no, those are wrong. That's wrong. You should not be thinking like that. Here's some advice. So connection is also really important for building a strong mind and a strong heart, right? And so as you're doing that, remember, someone that's only focused on what is in front of them eventually becomes a really arrogant person that thinks only their perspective is right, right? So you're going to stay sad. You're going to not be free. The thoughts are going to be there. You're going to destroy your relationships with people. And all of those things are going to happen over and over and over if you only focus like this. If your perspective is only tunnel vision, right? But a wise person always knows their options. A wise person will always receive counsel. A wise person will always try to see different perspectives. They will always try to understand and think, am I being wrong? Is it that I'm wrong? Maybe I'm wrong. A wise person will always think about this, right? And eventually a wise person can be one that inspires other people. And they understand that difficulties are not to kill you. Difficulties make you stronger. And so I am going to leave you actually with a quote from Frederick Douglass. He says, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. If there is no struggle, there is no progress. If there is no challenges, you cannot have a strong mindset. If there are no difficulties, you cannot have a strong heart, because that's the only way to build it. So I want you to change the way you see see problems and difficulties. I want you to fight through them. I want you to seek help. And I want you to think about at the end, because it won't stay the same, how you will be better, how you will be a better person and a stronger person when you get to the other side. Okay? And so I'm going to end right here. And I'm not really sure what happens next. I think there are questions and answers, right? question here. Someone sent me a question. Do you always have to believe what the heart says? Actually, you have to be very careful in believing what your heart says. And that is why you need to always find counsel. So I'll go back to, let's say I'm arguing with my husband. My heart is going to tell me I am right all the time. All the time, my heart is going to tell me that I'm right. When I'm arguing with somebody else, I'm going to always be the one that's right. So you have to be very careful in believing everything that comes out of your heart. Because remember, 85% of what you're thinking on a daily basis is negative in some way, right? And that 95% is repetitive. So actually the things that come up in your heart, it's really important that you have someone that is like a mentor to you, where you can say, this is really what I was thinking. This is what really the situation is, and someone that can be a guide for you. But you don't easily accept everything that comes out of your heart. That is also, that can be very dangerous. And so that's why we have to reflect and navigate our hearts and think about our hearts a lot and say the things that are inside of our hearts a lot so that it can come out, right? So that's really, really important. Thank you for that question. Your thinking is driven by your experiences around you and how your mind thinks through things and your perspective. So if you're someone that practices, that always thinks about different perspectives, then that's really, really good. And if you're someone that's always eager to seek counsel, then that's really, really good. But if you're someone that is driven only by your thoughts and you're being right, that is very, very dangerous. So someone that is intoxicated, how can he think differently? Differently? So someone that's intoxicated, what everyone around him probably says is stop doing that. That's not going to work. And that's what he's heard all his life. Stop doing that, stop doing that, stop doing that. But what the counsel for someone that is an alcoholic has to be is not stop doing that. The counsel has to be, when did you start drinking in the first place? Why did you start drinking in the first place? What caused you to keep drinking? When did it start? So going all the way back and letting that person go from the bottom of their heart out is really, really, really important. For example, in the United States, there's so many veterans who drink because they want to forget the war. But when they come back and people see them, why is he drinking? He's an alcoholic. What's his problem? I have students also who started to drink from they were 13 years old because they were sexually abused. But when people see them, why are you drinking? Why are you drinking? Stop drinking. Don't pick that up. But no one has ever really resolved what was at the bottom of their heart to make them pick it up in the first place. And so those are the conversations. Someone not drinking is not going to happen overnight. But the conversations that need to start happening is, when was the first time you did it? Why did you pick it up for the first time? Why did you do drugs for the first time? What made you keep going? Those conversations have to start coming from the bottom, right? But things that usually make someone addicted to something negative is because they store all the pain inside and then they use the alcohol or the drugs to cover.